K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
This is JD and Stacy with K98 Talk. We're here to talk to you about TPA. You may have called it Fast Track, TPA, or Trade Authority. Whatever it is called, it is a terrible idea and is coming up for a vote as early as June 11th.
Barack Obama is negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership under an unprecedented veil of secrecy. Our congressmen who view it are threatened with legal action if they disclose details of the documents to the American public.
Fast Track or Trade Promotion Authority, if passed, will prevent Congress from making amendments, debating the provisions, and allow passage of trade agreements with a simple majority.
There is no conservative case for Fast Track Trade Promotion Authority. Our systems of checks and balances demands that Congress weigh and debate trade agreements, demand that Congress does their job.
For information about Trade Promotion Authority and what it really means, visit coalitionforastrongamerica.com and then call your congressman and demand they vote no on TPA when it comes to the floor of the House. This has been a public service announcement by JD and Stacy of K98 Talk.
K98Talk.com, a leader in Internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98Talk.com.
We believe in the American way, and we built this country called the USA, and we fly our flag because we're proud and free, we're Americans. Red, white, and blue is our way of life. Never back down from a challenge or a fight. Nature provides, God gives the rights, we're Americans. We fish the waters and we hunt the lands. We forge the steel with our own two hands. With what we've got, we do the best we can, we're Americans.
It's time now for the Conservative Curmudgeon Radio Show on K98 Talk. Now, here's Grouchy.
All right. Welcome to the program. Boy, the world is a buzz today. Everybody's talking fast track trade and Trans-Pacific Partnership. Well, guess what? Not me. I touched on it a couple weeks ago. You might have heard my interview with Ambassador John Bolton on that topic some too. I'm going to leave this to everybody else for right now. There's a lot more information that's starting to trickle out and become available. And some of my cohorts here on K98 and other stations are bringing that out to your attention. Just remember where you heard it first, folks, and then you can come back and pat me on the back like I'm doing right now. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about something much more important. Let's talk about what's going on in the Middle East. Because you see, right now, our Pentagon is drawing up plans to expand the training of Iraqi forces and Sunni tribal fighters. What does that mean? Well, it could mean deploying a few thousand more troops over to Iraq, where we're not supposed to have any boots on the ground, where we've already got a few thousand boots on the ground. But according to President Obama's administration officials, the administration is not contemplating a radical change in war strategy or sending American forces into ground combat. Apparently, we just need a few thousand more people over there to train the cowardly Iraqi forces how to stand and fight. Folks, Look, I don't know how many of you have ever been in combat situations. I don't really have an expectation. And Mr. Producer, to your message, that's a Big Ten, Roger. But anyway, what I don't get is he doesn't want to radically change his war strategy. The only thing he really wants to radically change is us here. But that's a topic for another show. What we've got going on in Iraq and Syria right now is, regardless of how can I say this and do it right? Regardless of what the ass clown known as Josh Earnest keeps telling everybody at the White House, we're not beating ISIS back in Syria and Iraq. They're 80 miles outside of Baghdad, stronghold up. Now, we also have Pentagon spokesman Colonel Steve Warren telling reporters that they've determined it's better to train more Iraqi security forces and that they are now working on a strategy on how to do that. What is this operation costing us? And wouldn't it really just be easier if we unloaded some shock and awe on them and got this whole thing over with and just decimated their ass like the White House keeps saying they are, but really aren't? Look, I get they want the Iraqis to fight their battle. I want them to fight their battle. But guess what? They're not fighting their battle. Okay? When ISIS took Ramadi, they did it with about 800 troops. And they're estimating between 3,000 and 4,000 Iraqi soldiers dropped weapons and ran from this force. Now, I'm sorry, if you're outnumbering somebody in the, let's go ahead and call it 4-to-1, 5-to-1 neighborhood, why are you dropping your weapons and running? They literally had enough soldiers for 4 or 5 to surround each ISIS fighter. How do you lose that fight? Look, Colonel Warren also said because the forces we've trained are performing better than expected, we feel it's in everyone's interest to train more. How in the hell can they sit there and say that they're performing better than expected? Did we expect them to turn and fight with ISIS? That would be about the only thing worse than what they've done so far. Now, they're not going into exactly how many more troops they want to send over. They won't give an exact number. But Warren did acknowledge that an expanded quote-unquote training effort, if approved, would require additional American troops deploying to Iraq. Defense officials have said that several hundred additional U.S. forces might be required. They want to do this incrementally. And, they're not going to drop an exact number because they want to put a few hundred in and say, okay, now we need a few hundred more, and then we need a few hundred more. They don't want to give an exact number because they don't want to limit themselves. Now, what they're saying is that a ramped up training program could mean deploying less than 1,000 troops, could mean, as well as increasing the number of training sites from the 4 currently being used. The training would carry a particular emphasis on the Sunnis, who are the ones that are actually staying and fighting, not so much the Iraq military who's turning their ass to the sun and running for shade. They're claiming that the Sunni community has yet to join the fight against ISIS in large numbers amid lingering distrust of the Shiite-led government in Baghdad. Well, since they've only been feuding for 1,500 years or more, who could blame them? And as ISIS jihadists have sought to exploit the Sunni sense of alienation from Baghdad, this is more of an effort to restore some of, or not necessarily trust per se, but trying to convince them with better the devil you know than the devil you don't. So Sunni tribal fighters do want more training, and they, along with some in Washington, are frustrated with what they consider a very slow pace of an expanded training program. But now, for the first time in almost 7 years, the Obama administration is now looking at American troops directly training Sunni volunteers. Weapons delivery to Sunnis, however, would continue to flow through the Iraqi central government. So, what are we going to? We're going to train. We're going to train Sunnis on how to use the weapons that Iraq has purchased from either Iran or Russia. I'm not sure what difference it makes. If we're giving Iraq weapons, let's train the Sunnis on those weapons and go ahead and arm them. I mean, basically, you're chasing your tail here. The administration is looking for what they're calling a quote-unquote refinement of the current strategy, which has relied on U.S.-led air power in support of local forces on the ground. Now, let me tell you about this U.S.-led air power. We're doing more flexing than fixing. And quite frankly, many pilots are being very frustrated by the fact that they're flying on missions where they're not allowed to engage, even though they can see plain as day that it's ISIS. And they're told, no, you can't engage. There's no serious talk of sending forward air controllers to the front with Iraqi or Kurdish forces, or dramatically expanding the American military presence. And as this should be, Republican lawmakers have blasted Obama over his approach to this conflict. Some are overly hawkish, demanding an all-out, let's turn everything that's sand into glass approach. We need to step this up and end this quicker. But although the U.S. military was considering broadening its training effort, Iraq's Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi and his government had difficulties providing enough recruits for courses and ensuring units showed up properly equipped. Colonel Warren back at the Pentagon said, we'd like to see more Sunnis come into the pipeline and be trained. This is what we have urged Abadi to help solve. After meeting Abadi on Monday in Germany, Obama said the Iraqi side needed to show it could make use of extra help being offered by the United States and other members of the anti-ISIS coalition that consists of probably about 6 or 7 other countries that are actually involved in doing anything, albeit very small involvement. But, it is what it is, and I guess we'll take what we got to take. Now, according to Obama, all the countries, this is a quote now, all the countries in the international coalition are prepared to do more to train Iraq security forces if they feel that additional work is being taken advantage of. And this was Obama at the G7, where he was putting on his best sidewalk shuffle to avoid answering any kind of serious questions. It was almost like he was doing a Hillary impersonation. But, Obama also said that one of the things we're still seeing in Iraq is places where we have more training capacity than we have recruits. So then why do we need more trainers? And this is completely asinine. He wants to send more over to train people, but they don't have people to train. Kind of jumping the shark here, I guess. U.S. concerns about the Iraqi army's ability to absorb the training were highlighted by the absence of trainees at Al-Assad Air Base in Anbar province, which is under ISIS control, by the way. Anbar province, Ramadi is the capital. Remember, they just took Ramadi. The Pentagon said Baghdad had pulled out the trainees and redeployed them to help provide security for a religious pilgrimage. The U.S.-led coalition has trained 8,920 Iraqi troops so far in basic combat skills, and 2,600 are going through courses now. And apparently the other 35,000 are turning tail and running somewhere. The U.S. trained troops have deployed to Samarra, north of Baghdad, to a front line in the north with Kurdish Peshmerga forces. Now, there's some fighters. You want to talk about taking it to them. We need about 10,000 more of them. And in Al-Kamara, in Anbar province, Warren said. Other units that completed the training are at the ready for an eventual counterattack to retake the city of Ramadi, which fell to ISIS jihadists on May 17th. Say what you will, they still have Ramadi, and here we are almost to the middle of June now. So anyway, that's what's going on over in Iraq. And quite frankly, it's a bit disheartening. Now, before we get going too far, let me jump back in my notes here real quick, and let me give you guys the call number in case you want to talk about this or anything else that's on your mind or coming out of my mouth. I don't mind whatever it is. You can reach me at 408-681-8255. That's 408-681-8255. And as always, my call lines are open from the start of the show to the end of the show. I won't block you out for anything. So give me a call. Again, it's 408-681-8255. All right. Now, let's get back into things here. What's next? Oh, yeah. Let's do an update on nuclear Iran, shall we? So, with less than a month to go before the reimposed June 30th deadline, this is like the fifth deadline now, for talks between Iran and the P5+1 nations, which is the United States, Great Britain, France, Germany, China, and Russia, on an agreement to restrict Iran's ability to develop a nuclear weapon. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, gave a televised speech in which he stated that the United States and Israel support the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. That's hilarious. That's downright stupid. But that's what he said. Now, our Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, testified a couple of years ago in Congress that Iran has the scientific, technical, and industrial capacity to build nuclear weapons. Whether it does so or not will be decided singly by this madman, Ayatollah Khamenei, who thinks that we support ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Now, During the Ayatollah's June 4th televised speech, according to a transcript published by the BBC, the audience interrupted the Supreme Leader on 5 occasions with chants that included "Death to America," "Neither compromise nor surrender, fight against America," "God is great," "Khomeini is the leader," "Death to anti-supreme jurisconsult," "Death to America," "Death to England," "Death to hypocrites and non-believers," and "Death to Israel. I mean, they are a colorful bunch over there, aren't they? Anyway, chance that the Ayatollah made his, declaration that the United States and Israel support Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. Today, the deviant Daesh, Al-Qaeda, or other such orientations are supported by America and Israel, said the Ayatollah. Daesh, D-A-E-S, or D-A-E-S-H, is the Arabic acronym for the Islamic State. They consider it kind of an insult. So feel free to use that, Daesh. Several of us out on social media have been using it for some time. It's not as easy or fun to say as ISIS, because that reminds me of an Egyptian princess that they're trying to pretend to be. But, here or there, it's a good thing. So anyway, basically the U.S. has been fighting ISIS under the current and previous names since at least 2003, when the U.S. went into Iraq and targeted the terrorist group, which was then led by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. And as General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, pointed out in a press conference last August, the territory that the Islamic State seeks to control includes not only Iraq, Kuwait, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon, but also Israel. So, anyway, Khomeini's June 4th speech marked the 26th anniversary of the death of Khomeini's predecessor, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, who was delivered at the shrine built at the site of Khomeini's tomb. Now, I know we've heard all kinds of names that sound so similar over there, but stay with me on this. Supreme Leader Khomeini posted an English translation of his speech on the English language version of his official website. In the speech, Khomeini warned against, quote-unquote, distorting the personality of him, or his personality, and then described 7 principles he believed were among those at the center to the late Ayatollah's Islamic vision. In explaining 4 of these 7 principles, the Ayatollah makes express reference to America. In explaining a 5th, he does not mention America, but does reference, quote, our enemy, quote, the rejection of arrogant domination, and, quote, the rejection of foreigners' domination over his country. The first Khomeiniite principle that Khomeini cited was his predecessor's insistence that there are 2 types of Islam, original Islam and American Islam. The first matter about Imam is that he proved original Mohammadi Islam and rejected American Islam, said Khomeini. Now, what the hell is American Islam? Well, during the Imam's lifetime and at all times, as far as we know, in the future too, the situation will be the same. American Islam has only 2 branches. One is secular Islam and the other is reactionary Islam. The Imam always placed those who had secular thoughts, that is to say, those who wanted religion, society, and individual social behavior to be separate from Islam, on an equal footing with those who had a reactionary outlook, The latter means those who adopt a backward outlook that is not understandable to broad-minded individuals, so they say. It means those who are prejudiced about their wrong principles. This is the meaning of being reactionary. And the Imam always mentioned these people together. Now, we've gotten to the bottom of the hour. We're going to continue this story when we come back in a minute. So stay with us. We're going to stick with nuclear Iran and their supreme leaders' rantings and ravings right after this commercial break. So stay tuned. We'll be back.
Oh, but ain't that America? You and me, ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
Now's the time to get involved. The Coalition for a Strong America is the only conservative grassroots organization meeting with congressmen and high-level staffers on a regular basis. Stephanie Scruggs, co-chairman, is concerned about the upcoming TPA vote.
First of all, what you need to know is that fast-track TPAs are still before Congress, where Congress gives their power to negotiate international trade agreements and treaties to the president.
She recommends contacting your representative and telling them to vote no on this measure. It comes to the floor this Thursday, June the 11th. For more information, go to coalitionforastrongamerica.com and let your voice be heard. This has been a special announcement from K98 Talk.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members or their families, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to keep them secure for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Join us at findwwp.org.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Oh, but ain't that America? You and me, ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
Little pink houses for you and me. I love it. All right, welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about the insane rantings and ravings of the Ayatollah Khamenei, who thinks that the United States and Israel support Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and that we're trying to bully Muslims into how they should believe. You know, he's an idiot. What can you do with him? But anyway, if you take a look at today, you'll see that two kinds of Islam exist in the world, according to Ayatollah Khamenei. We have the reactionary and we have the secular, and he thinks that we are pushing these on people. Some other orientations that work in the name of Islam but that know nothing about Islamic action. Fiqh and Sharia are supported by America as well, he says. Yes, of course they are. The kind of Islam that is practiced by court akhunds. Imam repeatedly used this term to refer to such people, the kind of Islam that is promoted by Daesh, the kind of Islam that is indifferent to the crimes committed by the Zionists and America. and the kind of Islam that is dependent on America and great powers and that acts with America's signals have their heads in one trough, said Khamenei. Well, I'm going to give him a little bit of credit on this, because anybody that subscribes to the teachings of Islam and practices them to the full and exact words of the Quran, they've definitely got their heads in one place, but I don't think it's a trough. I think they've got them squarely planted up their ass, and that their view is being obstructed by their colon. The second of Khomeini's principles that Khomeini discussed also related to his view of the United States, and that is reliance on divine assistance, trust in the truthfulness of divine promises, and at the opposite end of the scale, distrust of arrogant and bullying powers in the world. That's us. He's referring to us, the arrogant and bullying powers. Imam's distrust of arrogant powers made him ignore their promises, said Iran's supreme leader. The president of America, and he's referring to way back then, Reagan, who was a powerful president, used to write letters and send messages and agents to the Imam. But Imam did not pay any attention to him. He did not respond to his letters. He did not care about the promises that Reagan gave. I'm thinking probably not. I'm thinking probably because there really weren't any letters and promises made. But anyway, just gives you a little insight into this guy. He wants to rewrite history and make it seem like we've been plotting against them for decades and decades and decades and trying to bully them into living an American lifestyle. Hey, guess what? I don't give a damn if you want to live like us. If you want to walk around in the desert, in the dirt, stepping in your goat feces and, drinking unpasteurized raw goat milk and barbecuing goat and camel and whatever the hell it is they do out there living like Bedouins, then have at it. Just leave America alone and let us live our lives. So anyway, he continued to rant and rave on, bringing up all these points, making sure that we knew, or that they knew, that his people knew, that America as a whole is the great Satan, and that we engage in oppressive behavior, what he called federal police, which is another scary topic for another show that Obama's moving towards ever quicker. With this position, it is possible to understand global events and to know what the correct position is, said Khamenei. Today, he says, we are as much opposed to the savage and oppressive behavior of Daesh in Iraq and Syria as we are to the oppressive behavior of America's federal police inside their own country. Both of them are the same, he said. So now he's comparing us to ISIS. This guy, what are you going to do? Clapper said that, that this Tehran has the scientific, technical, and industrial capacity to produce nuclear weapons if they choose to do so. The central issue is its political will, said Clapper. Such a decision will be made by the supreme leader and him alone. At this point, we don't know if he'll eventually decide to build nuclear weapons, so says Clapper. Now, the Senate committee went into more and more detail, pressing Clapper for whether he knew about whether they were leaning one way or another or had made a decision one way or the other. And Clapper says we continue to hold that they have not made a decision, and that decision would singly again be made by the supreme leader. Clapper is beating his gums to the Obama drums and feeding Congress a line of crap. Now, it doesn't take a genius to know that when they're refining uranium to the purity levels that they are, that there's only one reason to do so, and that is weapons grade. Clapper couldn't say enough times that they believe that the ultimate decision would be made by their supreme leader. Well, no kidding. I think if Khamenei declared that you could only use the bathrooms on odd hours, that would be his decision to make alone too. Who cares? We know they're going to do this. I worry about their capacity with nuclear weapons. I don't know whether they want 1, whether they want 10, or whether they want 1,000. If they only want 10, I get really, really worried. If they only want 1, I get really, really worried. I know it sounds kind of weird, but think about it if they only wanted 10, or hell, even if they only wanted 100, that's kind of desperation mode. That's kind of saying, we just want enough to throw one big attack and hope that we live through what's going to come back at us. So their willingness to die to take us out. And that's what worries me. And this administration worries me just as much because they're so stupid they can't see this. Okay, so that's enough of that. I'm not going to beat that drum too much. But I am going to continue on with the theme of stupid. And that comes from our president, who flatly at a news conference in Germany on Monday said that, quote unquote, the Affordable Care Act, the intent of Obamacare is clear, and the law, quote, doesn't need fixing. Now, he continued to say, quote, there is no reason why the existing exchanges should be overturned through a court case. Now, he insisted this just days before the Supreme Court is expected to rule on a case that could eliminate subsidies for people who got their insurance through the federal exchange. Obama, a quote-unquote former constitutional law professor, if you believe that joke, says laws should be interpreted based on their intent. And under well-established statutory interpretation, approaches that have been repeatedly employed not just by liberal Democratic judges, but by conservative judges like some on the Supreme Court, you interpret a statute on what the intent and meaning of the overall structure of the statute provides for, said Obama. Now, he continued to say, this should be an easy case. Frankly, it shouldn't have even been taken up. And, since we're going to get a ruling pretty quick, I think it's important for us to go ahead and assume that the Supreme Court is going to do what most legal scholars who've looked at this would expect them to do. So Obama's trying to influence the Supreme Court before they hand down their decision on this. Not the first time he's tried to influence the courts, and certainly won't be the last before he's done. The Supreme Court case focuses on not on intent, but on the plain language of the Affordable Care Act. Now, the question is whether the Internal Revenue Service, by regulation, can extend tax credit subsidies to people who purchase health insurance on the federal exchange versus those who purchased on the state exchange. 4 words in the law specify that only exchanges, quote unquote, established by the state may offer subsidized health insurance. But most states let the federal government set up the exchanges for them. Obama said eliminating subsidies for people who enrolled in the federal exchange is a bad idea. Well, so was the ACA, but it got passed into law, jackass. It's not something that should be done based on a twisted interpretation of 4 words, as we are reminded repeatedly in a couple thousand pages of legislation. You know, this was a great take on this. We have an audio clip from Representative Jeb Hensarling from Texas, who was with Neil Cavuto on Monday. And Mr. Producer, if you have that soundbite queued up, let's go ahead and play that here, and let's get Representative Hensarling's take on Obama's trying to influence the Supreme Court on the ACA ruling.
Well, forget about opening arguments defending the health care law. The president thinks it is a closed case. Texas Republican Congressman Jeb Hensarling is not quite convinced. And Congressman, you and I were briefly chatting during the break here that whether that could hurt his chances if the Supreme Court heard this. What do you mean we're all but idiots for taking it up,
well,
right?
I hope so. I must admit, with all due respect to the president, it's somewhat mind-boggling to me that he actually used to teach law. So number one, what he really wants is a unilateral, unlawful Obamacare do-over. The statute is pretty clear that in order to receive the subsidies in question, you have to be part of a state exchange. And now the president is saying, well, we really didn't mean that. And so this is what we really meant. Well, unfortunately, the English language gets in the way. And again, this is the president eroding the rule of law. And if I was on the Supreme Court, I'd be a little bit offended.
Now, would you be offended to the point that, let's say a decision was actually made some time ago, will come out maybe next Monday or the Monday thereafter, but that the ruling is such that they have said, let's hypothetically here, that it's too far into this to start changing about the constitution of the subsidies. We'd disrupt the whole thing. Millions would be without insurance. And a statement like this hurts the president because they can go back and revisit that and say, no.
Well, it isn't the first time that the president has lectured the Supreme Court. We certainly know that. If I was him, I would be offended. Having said that, I would still hope I would do my job, and my job is to interpret the law.
But what of that interpretation that I had, and I'm no lawyer, but that you're so deep in this thing now that if you were, even with very valid reasons, to question the Constitution aspect of subsidies, it would mess everything up.
Well, even Chief Justice Roberts has said that is not their job to make the public policy. And indeed, under our system of checks and balances, separation of powers, that is not their job.
Well, so how do you think the court will rule?
I don't know. I'm not.
So let's say they rule against the constitution subsidies. Then the onus will be on you and the president. Well, what do you do with these 10 million or so?
Well, listen, I think it's a very valid issue. Republicans have worked together in order to provide an off-ramp to Obamacare. I mean, the reasons these policies are so expensive is because of all the different mandates. And so through a series of various tax incentives, through deductions and credits, through ensuring that states can no longer have to follow the employer and employee mandates. We hope we can make so
there could be a way to move on.
There's a way to move on. There's an off-ramp to Obamacare that gets us where we need to go.
Okay. Well, that was Representative Jeb Hensarling from Texas explaining, what the Republicans have been working towards. And quite frankly, in the same press conference on Monday that they were referring to there with Neil Cavuto, Obama said that he does not have a backup plan if the Supreme Court rules against his administration. He said he's optimistic that the Supreme Court will, quote unquote, play it straight when it comes to the interpretation. And I should mention that if I didn't, Congress could fix this whole thing with a one-sentence provision. I don't see that happening now. Obama described the Affordable Care Act as a quote-unquote model where all the pieces connect, and if somebody does something that doesn't make any sense, then it's hard to fix. So, that in mind, let's hope the Supreme Court does play it straight and actually interprets the law as it's written. And let's get people off of the Affordable Care Act. There's a better way, folks. There is a better way. Trust me. Now, we haven't done this in a little while, so let's talk about Waste Watch. Yeah, our friends at the National Institutes of Health, through its National Institute of Mental Health, has awarded $177,147 taxpayer dollars to the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation to reduce, get this now, intimate partner violence among South African youth. Okay, you getting that? They're spending your and my tax dollars on domestic violence programs for South African youth. They say that HIV prevalence rates in South Africa are among the highest in the world. Transmission is largely heterosexual, and young people, especially young females, are disproportionately affected. It is increasingly understood that efforts to promote safer sexual practices in this vulnerable population may be undermined by high rates of intimate partner violence, or IPV, as the grant abstract stated. This just galls me to no end. I hate seeing our tax dollars wasted like this. Unfortunately, it's not the only instance we have to talk about tonight, because the National Institutes of Health, through its National Institute on Drug Abuse, has awarded $226,364 tax dollars to the University of California at San Francisco to develop, get this now, you're going to love this, quote, a culturally relevant intervention aimed at improving post-incarceration healthcare engagement among transgender women. What the flying hell is that supposed to mean? They say incarceration is a significant public health issue that disproportionately impacts transgender women. So for some reason, we have a large population of incarcerated transgender women. When the hell did this happen? Apparently, the cycle of incarceration interacts with high levels of substance use, mental illness, and HIV to produce an elevated burden of disease among this population. Now look, if you're a dude that wants to be a girl or a girl that wants to be a dude, I don't give a damn. Okay? Quit asking for our taxpayer dollars to support your lifestyle or support your surgery to get to your lifestyle or anything else that has to do with your gherkin for jerkin or paddling your canoe or whatever the hell you want to call it. We don't care. Now, when they tried to contact the person that wrote this grant, they got no reply for comments, of course. So, anyway, we've got transgendered women and South African youth soaking up almost $400,000 of our tax money. For what? What benefit do the American taxpayers get from this? Folks, we're going to wrap it up tonight. Things like these Waste Watch items are what you need to be harping on your elected officials about. Okay? Things like TPA and TPP. Okay? If you don't know the difference, look them up because we've used our show up tonight. I don't know what Jason has planned for you on According to Me coming up next, but I can assure you it's going to be quite good, so do stay tuned. get your butt settled in and get ready for some ATM right after my show tonight. And, folks, I can't tell you enough to do your research. You need to know what TPA is. You need to know what TPP is. You need to know what Congress and the president and his administration are wasting our tax dollars on. And we need to corral these morons in. We need to tell them to do their damn jobs and do them the right way. Or you know what? We need to remove them from office and replace them with somebody that will do the will of the people. Because that's what it's supposed to be all about. They're not supposed to be up there serving their own self-interest. They're supposed to be serving our interests. And I think there are very few that are doing that right now. Very few. There are some, but they are few. So, folks, as I get ready to wrap it up tonight, let me leave you with one more quick audio clip because this is my dumbass of the week. Mr. Producer, we got to skip over an audio clip, I believe. If we can get the Eleanor Clift audio clip and get that queued up real quick here. This is my dumbass of the week. Eleanor Clift, as she appeared on the McLaughlin Group panel, where she said this.
What happened to the mainstream media?
Organization has investigated this to death. This animates the right wing of the Republican Party. And I would like to point out that Ambassador Stevens was not murdered. He died of smoke inhalation in the safe room in that CIA installation.
I don't think that's the fact,
but it
Eleanor.
Changes that. I think that is
no. I think I've heard a drastically different story from people who are also in the know about that. So I don't think. I think it was
attack, Eleanor. He was murdered in a terrorist.
It was an opportunistic terrorist attack that
opportunistic.
That's the question. That grew out of that video.
The video had nothing to do with it.
There were demonstrations across the world because of that.
Not in Benghazi. There was no video related to it at all.
That's why you're still opportunistic, and it's still a CIA. And if you're going to put people on trial, we should put David Petraeus on trial, not Hillary Clinton.
Okay, folks, that was Eleanor Clift, my dumbass of the week. And as you could hear her rambling on, she wants to put David Petraeus on trial and not Hillary Clinton over the Benghazi attack. So as I bid you good night, I remind you again that coming up next is Jason DeWilkins with According to Me tomorrow night on K98 Talk. Stay tuned in for Red Nation Rising and for JD and Stacy with Game On. Folks, I'm your Grouch, and I'm out of here. I will see you next week. Take care and God bless.
This country called the USA, and we fly our flag cause we're proud and free, we're Americans. Red, white, and blue is our way of life. Never back down from a challenge or a fight. Nature provides, God gives the rights, we're Americans.